Kwe, Guanu, hello, welcome. Ndili wisi wanahamugasit Najio Benawabskek, Ndil Nabamuk, Wasus, Nil Benawabskek, and Gakagus, Nil Zabayik. My name is Sherri Mitchell from the Penobscot Nation. My family is Bear Clan from the Penobscot Nation, Crow Clan from the Passamaquoddy tribe in Zabayik. Nili Hasiu and Dai, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. It's an honor, and as some of you know, I kind of live in a whirlwind, and so my pants are still wet from the dryer, my hair is still damp from my late shower. I thought it was 1:30 and I looked and it was 2:30 and it's an hour drive to get here, so I was miraculously fast in arriving and put my comments together at the last minute. And so many of us are coming together during this time because we're concerned about the direction that we're moving in. And so it's really a simplistic formula for going forward, and Michael Franti has encapsulated it beautifully on my t-shirt. It says, eat, sleep, hug, kiss, dance, change the world, repeat. So love is the revolution. And that's really what it's all about. And so I didn't know what the rules were for today, so I put together a combination of quotes and some of my own writing and other things woven in through it to try to make it cohesive. Some cobbled together excerpts from my upcoming book, Sacred Instructions, The Heart of Spirit-Based Change. And I'm honored to be able to be here with you and to share it in my disheveled state. Charles de Montesquieu wrote, "The tyranny of a prince in an oligarchy is not so dangerous to the public welfare as the apathy of a citizen in a democracy, and that there is no crueler tyranny than that which is perpetuated under the shield of law and in the name of justice." Today we all stand together on the precipice of change. It is up to each one of us as citizens in this democratic experiment to avoid apathy, complacency, and complicity in the unfolding injustice that is now being cloaked under the color of law. As we move forward today in this writers' movement, I think it's also apt to point out that Montesquieu also defined authors as those fools not content to have bored those who lived with them, but who now insist on tormenting the generations yet to come. So as we all endeavor to stay woke, let us not be content to bore our peers, but do our very best to torment the generations yet to come. Many have suggested that we are currently in a fascist state, heading toward totalitarianism. This is not the first time that society has sat on this doorstep. Many have come before us and faced the same challenges that we face today. With all of the labels and political discourse surrounding this time, it is easy to get distracted from the core issues. Yet, by looking to the wisdom keepers of our past, we find centering directives that can guide us back to the work at hand. Gandhi asked us a pertinent question that I think is at the core of our movements today. What difference does it make to the dead, to the orphans, and to the homeless, whether the mad destruction is being wrought under the name of totalitarianism or under the holy name of liberty or democracy? This brings us directly to the heart of the issue. What are our roles and responsibilities as citizens under a democracy, or even more broadly, as human beings that are part of the larger scheme of creation? It is our responsibility as citizens within a democracy to focus on fairness within the electoral or political process. Is it our responsibility to ensure alignment with a particular structure of government, to secure the safety of our group, to protect our individual land holdings and other markers that we've designated as symbols of success and security, or is there something more? Chief Oren Lyons, who's a wisdom keeper of the Onondaga and one of the elders that I've had the privilege of working with for the past 20 years, wrote, "We are indigenous people to this land. We are like a conscience. We are small, but we are not a minority. We are the land holders and the land keepers. We are not a minority, for our brothers and sisters are all the natural world, and by that we are by far the majority. We want you to understand the opportunity being presented right now. It is no time to be afraid. There is no time to fear. It is only time to be strong, only a time to think of the future and to challenge the destruction of your grandchildren, and to move away from the 4-year cycle of living that this country goes through from one election to another, and think beyond that to the coming generations. We can't afford to have these national borders now. We can't afford to have racism. We can't afford another apartheid. We cannot. Time is one of the luxuries that we don't have anymore as human beings. We've got to think now in real terms for the 7th generation. And we've got to move in concert. We've got to sing the same song. And we've got to have the same ceremony. We've got to get back to spiritual law, to the Creator's natural law, if we are to survive. The thinking of elders like Oren Lyons has shaped my thinking, my teaching, and my way of being in the world. So I'd like to leave you today with some excerpts cobbled together for my upcoming book, Sacred Instructions. I think that perhaps these offerings may provide us with some considerations that might be valuable as we move forward to meet the challenges ahead. I'll begin by picking up with a question that I asked myself in the middle of the 3rd chapter. What does it mean when we say that we are all one? What if we really are all one? Not just in a philosophical sense, but literally one living being experiencing life simultaneously in multiple forms. If this is true, then I am simply encountering myself repeatedly in the face of the people that I meet on every street, every day. As I began contemplating the very real possibility that we are all one, another question began to arise. How do I want to meet myself on the path? How will I meet the young woman that is struggling to find her sense of self? Or the elder that is befuddled by the rapidly changing technology that exists in the modern world? How do I meet the man with political views that oppose mine? Or the person with ideological views that create and promote division? Could I show up in these moments with self-love and compassion? As we all know, compassion is hard to find when we feel that we've been wronged, or when we see harmful and destructive actions playing out before us. Could I find that compassion if I truly believed that I was the imagined other? In the reflected images that surround us, we see aspects of ourselves that we admire, and we see aspects of ourselves that we'd like to deny. We see the bright light and the deep darkness. When we experience harmful or destructive actions, we aren't engaging some dangerous outside force. We are meeting the shadows of our own humanity. Often these experiences will inspire us to bring light to the shadow that's being presented. This allows us the opportunity to heal and balance the wounds hidden. However, if we meet that experience with more darkness, then we will simply expand the shadow and create more space for harm. So how do we face the shadows that we see and bring light instead of darkness? How do we get to the place where we are willing to stop blindly lashing out and end the war within ourselves and with others? We do so by facing ourselves in every reflection, in every moment, with some degree of compassionate awareness and spiritual maturity. This is the real work of our lives. We are here today to help bring light into the shadows so that we may heal our hidden wounds and recall all the lost fragments of our collective soul. This work cannot be done without compassion and spiritual maturity. Therefore, we must consciously strive to develop both so that we can fulfill our purpose. It is no coincidence that we find ourselves here at this place in time. We have all agreed to be here right now. In fact, we were born for a time such as this, purposely. We have all followed an evolution of awareness that has led us to this exact moment where we possess this exact understanding of our connectivity and co-creative abilities. Thus, the question is not why are we here, but rather how do we reconcile the external landscape that exists out there with the inner landscape that exists in here. Can we find the terrorist that is lurking out there inside ourselves? Can we identify the many ways that we attack ourselves, hate ourselves, and reject ourselves? Can we recognize the patterns of harm that we have been involved in and consciously choose to heal the karmic reverberations that are unfolding all around us? And will we finally find a way to create a new reality of peaceful existence now that we know that failing to do so would be a complete destruction of ourself? I find hope in the teachings of those who have come before me. For instance, Chickasaw poet Linda Hogan writes in her book, Dwellings, A Spiritual History of the Living World, "Suddenly, all my ancestors are behind me. Be still, they say. Watch and listen. You are the result of the love of thousands." This one beautiful quote recognizes the long lineage of life that gave rise to our existence. How incredible to think that we have risen up out of such love. Whether it be the love of a man for a woman, a mother for her child, or the sweet love found in the eyes of a grandparent. We are all tied to a lineage of love that has existed since time immemorial. Even if we haven't had a direct experience of that love, we know that it exists and that it has made an indelible imprint on our souls. It's remarkable to think that the entire span of human life exists within each one of us, going all the way back to the hands of the Creator. In our bodies, we carry the blood of our ancestors and the seeds of our future generations. We are all the living conduit to life. When we contemplate the vastness of the interwoven network that we are tied to, our individual threads of life seem far less fragile. We are strengthened by those who have come before and inspired by those who will follow. When we connect with our ancestors and put their wisdom into action, we are evolving our collective consciousness. We are transporting the ancient truths of our past and birthing them into the future. When what we create out of those truths extends the wisdom of all those who have come before us, and it will provide a guide for those who will follow. Kiowa author N. Scott Momaday says, "We are what we imagine. Our very existence consists in our imagination of ourselves. Our best destiny is to imagine, at least completely, who and what and that we are. The greatest tragedy that can befall us is to go unimagined." Imagination is a powerful force. When we tap into our imagination, we are actively engaging the process of creation. We create by bringing something new into our field of possibility, breathing life into it and calling it into form. This same creative impulse exists in our ancient stories. When we tell those stories, we are bringing our ancestors forward, and we are breathing life into the developing form of our future generations. This process is evolutionary, as it carries that ancient wisdom forward, allows us to integrate it into our present experience, and then expand on it. Every person alive here today, every person in this room, is part of the dream of the ancestors. We are the fulfillment of prophecy. And now we must step into our role as the ancestors of the future and dream the next 7 generations into being, recognizing that giving them life is not enough. We must also provide them with a world that is capable of sustaining their lives. This is the work of our time. To succeed in this work, we must reconnect with the thread of life. We must learn the spiritual language spoken by our ancestors and renew the relationship that they long held with the rest of creation. Together, we must turn from our stories of domination and destruction and dream a new world into being, a world that is capable of peace, justice, harmony, and balance, a world that honors the sacredness of every single life. So as we seek for ways to address the tyranny that we see unfolding around us, let us not so much resist as persist in perpetuating life forward by cultivating and protecting life in all its myriad forms. Let us imagine a new way of being in relationship with one another and with the living earth, beyond political associations, isms, and all other divisions that keep us fragmented. And together, let us hold that image in sacred space and breathe life into it until it takes form and we are able to walk into it as flesh and blood. And most of all, let us persist in carrying forward the great lineage of love that we have all risen from, in honor of all those who have come before us, and deep reverence for all those who will follow. Kachi Williwan, thank you so much for allowing me to be here.